Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien and Bubba here on the morning of Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. How an appropriate day, huh? April 20th, 2021. It's the birthday of Adolf Hitler. Yeah. And it comes apropos because of the subject matter I have to discuss today. So here's an editorial. And the editorial is on Maxine Waters. She is the problem, not the solution to this mess we're in with the Chauvin trial. And let me say why she's a problem. She is what I've been telling you about for the last 3 years, or 4 years almost, on these videos, on YouTube and also Facebook. And let me refresh your memory a little bit. In 1865, slavery was ended, and not by the Emancipation Proclamation, but because the South was defeated. And Congress, the radical Republicans, wanted to stick it to the South. So this wasn't done because they loved African Americans. This was done as a political retribution. The 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments. And when you do something like that, before you do them, you should have had, how are we going to implement this? How are we going to bring these Negroes, as they were called at the time, into our society integrated? You just can't. Oh, here you go, and you run for governor, you run for Senate, and you run for office, straight out of being slavery. Really? They just did that. And to hell with everything else. You do what you want down there. We got Reconstruction. And you do what you want. We'll take care of those crazy Southerners. Yes. That was mistake number one. Mistake number two was, oh, well, we got an election here. It's been 11 years after the Civil War ended. 1876. And our candidate, Rutherford B. Hayes, is as stiff as a doornail. And that's what he was. He was Mr. Stiffy. Yeah. And lo and behold, Samuel Tilden is beating us big time. He's going to become president. Oh, what do we do? Hey, 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 yo-ho. And the Democrats come a calling here. Hey, you want the presidency? Give us the South. As what they call them, the Redeemers from the Southern Democrats, later known as segregationist and Jim Crow law guys. But they were the Redeemers at the time. Yeah? So they came in and they did the little backroom deal. They stole the election from Samuel Tilden and gave it to Rutherford B. Hayes, and the Northerners, the Republicans, took all the federal troops out of the southern states. What was left of them anyway. There was a few that already had gone. And therefore it became the Solid South for a century. The Solid South. Jim Crow law started to effect. They started to create guys in the Supreme Court with 2 terms of Grover Cleveland. Yeah. So by 1900, the Jim Crow laws became the law of the South, especially with the 1896 decision of Plessy versus Ferguson. They became the law of the land. Equal but separate, as they call them. Except that in the South, they were not even equal but separate. They didn't want them separate, they want them hung. Yeah. Are you listening, Miss Waters? Because this is your problem. In 1954, it was a Board of Education, Brown versus the Board of Education. Yeah, it was really a couple cases converted into one, and that's what they called it. Anyway, the assumption was that it overturned Plessy versus Ferguson. But then, it was left like that, just like in 1865. So the South still kept on going with their segregation. They told the Supreme Court, you go stick it up your where the sun don't shine. Yeah. And up until 1965, where the same civil rights laws that were done in 1865 under those 3 amendments to the Constitution were done by the Congress again in 1965. You know them as the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Voting Act and all the other ones. They were passed by LBJ. Yeah. But they had the same problem as 1865. In 100 years, you guys still had watermelons for brains up there. How do you integrate pigmentations into a society? And not only that, you had not only African Americans this time, you had Asians, Latins, and Indians. And I don't mean from India. You treated the North American Indians like they were worse than the African Americans. You always have, and you always have not changed that policy. So, you turn your backs, and therefore, for the last 50 years, we've had this problem. Because you don't know how to integrate pigmentations, and now the pigmentations have created factions. So you got to deal with the pigmentations and factions. And for Miss Waters, the reason I say you're a problem is because of this. In 1991, Rodney King got beaten by the police officers. Yes. Were they guilty? Oh, yeah, they violated the civil rights. But remember, at the time, and you are part of the problem now because you are part of the California establishment that still exists as a liberal. And at the time, the liberals in California in 1991 said they committed no crime. And you guys started what you did in Watts in 1965. Riots? What did that cost you in Watts? Disaster. 1967, Detroit. And have you seen Detroit lately? It has never recovered from those 67 riots. And the people, the white people in LA, the white people in Detroit, they have left Watts and they have left Detroit to be a disaster. 1968, all the riots that you had because of the assassination of Martin Luther King. 1991, the riots because of Rodney King. But why didn't you have the whites riot against you guys the next year in 1992 when Reginald Denny, and where were you, Mr. Waters, to say, oh, that was an injustice for us, by us. Really? It was. It wasn't injustice by you. So you suffered an injustice and you committed an injustice. But you don't say that. No! Really? No. Since 1991, all you have is anger and hate. And with anger and hate, you shouldn't be representing the United States or your district over there. You're like AOC, you're like Tlaib, and you're like Omar. Anger and hate. And radical things. The solution was Martin Luther King. And he said it best in his 1963 speech, I have a dream that all beings should be brothers and one in the same. He knew what the outcome was going to be, that there was going to be no more black, no more white, and no more any colors. Pigmentation issue was gone. You are human beings, all in one. That doesn't mean you're all equal. That means that you all have the same guarantees in life to do what best is for you, because nobody is equal. There's not a white equal to a white. There's nobody equal to each other. You all have different attributes and capabilities that distinguish you from another person. This is what I'm trying to tell you, human beings, and you, especially you watermelons for brains Americans, especially the African Americans. And why the slash? Since you came to this country, you've been called Negroes, then you wanted to be called blacks, then you said African Americans. Always setting yourself apart. And the whites, they set each other apart. They've got white trash and all other kinds of no-ra-rish and all other kinds of stuff that they set themselves apart. The Indians from India have a caste system. The Asians, you don't see Chinese going, "Hey, brother, how you doing?" to a Japanese, or a Japanese saying, "Hiya, hiya," to a Vietnamese, right? Or a Korean. Why? Because they hate each other with a passion, just like you hate whites. So you see, it's not just your pigmentation. The only way you're going to get this through, Miss Waters, and I know you got watermelons for brains, so you won't hear this, is you have to get together with every other pigmentation on this United States and say, we got to get rid of these pigmentations. No more blacks, no more whites. We are Americans and we are humans, and set the culture as a model for human culture. That's the only way you're going to do it. But are you? No, because you don't have the gumption to do that. You got too much hate and too much anger in you to do that. And then you're trying to spread it into this generation. Your generation is coming past. This generation needs help. Give it to them. And tell that your generation was bad. So was the white in your generation. The whites of this generation, the blacks of this generation, the Asians of this generation has got to do something about this. And as far as the Chauvin case, Miss Waters, is he guilty? Yes. And I'm pretty sure they're going to find him guilty of third-degree murder. And why are you going to go protesting and rioting and destroying property for that? Because everybody on this thing is guilty. Mr. Floyd's family was guilty. You are guilty. Mr. Chauvin's guilty. The police department is guilty. The city of Minneapolis is guilty. The governor of Minnesota is guilty. Yes, every single person is guilty of Mr. Floyd's death. Same with Mr. Wright. Because of the way you guys think and the way you guys do business. Every single one of you are guilty. This is your favorite alien and Bubba. Good day.